let's talk about sanding. This will frequently be the final step before you do a final polish or sealant on your piece. So it'll be fully formed, filed, and then you'll use the sandpaper to get out all the scratches and get a nice smooth finish on your metal. It's amazing to me, but when sanded properly, metal can actually feel soft, which isn't a quality that one might think it has. Sandpaper comes in different varieties and different roughnesses, referred to as grits. In our class, we're using wet dry sandpaper, which is the black kind, because it can hold up. Sometimes we need to use our sandpaper with water or oils, and it holds up a lot better than the yellow kind, which kind of falls apart. So get wet dry sandpaper. Walmart carries this pack, 3M. I'm not loyal to a brand, I'm just saying this is at Walmart, or usually it is. That has 220, 320, and 400. The three basic grits that we're going to be using in this class. 600 would be good to have, and above that would also be great. However, you definitely need these three. Automotive sandpapers go all the way up to thousands of grits, which is really cool. And I'll show you something similar that I've got. One tip I have for you about your sandpaper is, a lot of what we do is small, and so you'll be cutting small pieces off, but on the backs, they're only labeled every so often. So frequently you end up with pieces like this that have no label on them, which can be confusing. So right after you cut it off, or even before you cut it off, take a Sharpie or a pen and write the grit number on it, so that you always can keep up with what you've got. So in grits, the bigger the number, the finer it is. So 220 is the lowest grit that we're typically going to use. It goes all the way down to 60 grit, I think, maybe even 30, but those are extremely coarse and aggressive, and they're going to make pretty deep scratches into the metal that you then have to sand out. So we start with 220 to get the base scratches out of the metal, and then we do 320, 400, and then you can go above that if you want to. I'm going to demonstrate them for you here in just a minute, but I did want to show you also this. This is a pack of polishing papers. They're very fabric-like. So the sandpaper is papery, whereas these polishing papers are almost more like fabric. You see that? They're kind of woven. They feel like money, like that paper but not paper feel. This is from Rio Grande, but you can buy it on Amazon in smaller packs, and this goes all the way up to 8,000. I like these because they're durable, and the colors make it easy to distinguish, so they don't actually have the grit numbers written on them. It comes with a list that tells you what grits are what colors, and I like that because then it's easier for me to keep track of. So in this set, I've got some over here. This yellowish green that has some metal dust on it already is 400 grit, similar to our sandpaper, 600 grit, and then it jumps up to 1200 grit, 4000 grit, 6000 grit, which just feels like fabric. And then the final one, I don't even have a piece pulled out of because I never use it, is the white one, which is 8000 grit. And it's really hard to even tell which side of this to use. This could be a really good option if you plan on doing a lot of your work at home, because it allows you to get a pretty nice high shine on your piece without the use of a rotary tool. So usually when we want to get a mirror finish on a piece or a very high shine, we'll use a rotary tool like a flex shaft or a Dremel, or a buffing wheel to really buff it to a high shine with a pad and some buffing compound. But if you don't have a rotary tool at your house, just with some manpower and stepping up your sandpaper repeatedly, you could get a pretty good shiny finish. All right, let's get to work. For this demonstration, I am using just a piece of brass. This is about 1 inch by, my guess is 4 inches. I'm going to sand the whole thing with 200 grit sandpaper and then slowly step it up, moving across so that you can kind of see a gradation. So I've just got my piece of 200 grit sandpaper here. I'm going to hold it with one hand, press down, and you'll see immediately that it's taking the tarnish off. That's not really what we're looking at though. We're looking at the scratches. It is extremely important when you're sanding to move all in one direction. Your brain will kind of adjust and make the scratches disappear. But if you go multiple directions, it can't do that, and you notice them far more. I've put a folder down just to protect my workspace because of all this dust and scratching that's going to be happening. You're going to spend the vast majority of your time on 200 grit or 220 grit because you're trying to get out any large scratches from manufacturing or from it bouncing around in your bag or whatever. All right, and there we have it, 200 grit done. It's a really pretty brush finish, and you could certainly leave it at that if you wanted to. You see it's still picking up fingerprints. And that's going to happen until we seal it with some wax or some spray sealant. But for now, this will work. So let me mark it, and then I'll move on to 320. It's important to wipe your piece off between grits because any leftover grit is going to be larger than the next grit you use, and it'll continue to scratch your piece. Now I'm going to go in with my 320 grit sandpaper. I'm going to avoid this part because I'm going to leave that 220 so that you can see it later. Here we have 320, so slightly smoother than the 220. 400. So that's all you're required to have is 220, 320, and 400. So you can tell a slight difference there between them, but definitely a 400 is a lot smoother than the 220 was. Just for fun, let me show you what some of the higher grits look like. So this is the 600 grit polishing paper. Look at that. Look at how much that's reflecting the light versus this down here. See that? That's the 600. Now for the 1200. That's the 1200. Oh, I can almost see myself in it. Looky there. Time for 4,000. Oh, you see my nose? I see my nose and my eyes. So that's the 4,000. We still have 2 more grits in this pack. Just for reference, 220, 320, 400, 1,200. Oh wait, 600, 1,200, 4,000. This one is 6,000. There's 6,000. There I am. See me raising my eyebrows? All right, so that's 6,000. Now let's try the last one we have, which is 8,000. Look at that. That's darn near mirror. Not quite, but it's close. You can see my face. So here we are again, just for reference. Shiniest, dullest. So it's obviously not a mirror finish, but it's quite shiny and is a good alternative if you are working from home without a rotary tool and want a little bit of shine to your piece.